What's up, Heartland? We are so glad that you are joining with us wherever you may be,
That's
whether
right.
that is the living room or the bedroom. If you've yet to get out of bed yet, it's all good. There's no judgment here. That's what
right.
I know.
Yeah.
And,
Anywhere you are,
yeah.
it's the right place to be.
And we're glad you're looking right through that little screen of whether it's your phone, your computer, or your TV, or whatever it may be. We're just happy that you
That's
that
right.
you joined
Yeah,
us.
it's going to be a great morning together.
Yeah, hey, 3 quick things you need to do. Subscribe to our YouTube if you can. Do that right now. Click the bell, ding, ding, dong, whatever the sound it makes.
Ding, ding. I don't think it makes a sound.
Let's just, as you do it, make your own sound. And also follow us on Instagram and Facebook. And if you're watching from Facebook, welcome. We're glad you're watching through the Facebook
Third thing.
app. And third thing is download our app, Heartland CC, in the App Store. Whether it's the Android App Store or whatever whatever they call it, or the real App Store, which is the Apple App Store.
Don't listen to Trevor. Just go get the app. That's all you need
Get
to do.
the app.
That's all you
You're
have to worry
absolutely right.
about. That's
Sure,
right. Yeah.
sure. That'll
All
work.
right. So here's the thing. We have been doing this thing called Operation Snowflake Shop, and we've been partnering with St. Elizabeth Center to make sure that there's some families in our area that are able to have some toys for Christmas. And Heartland, you guys have shown up in a huge way.
Huge.
It's so exciting. There's like so many
If I
presents.
could jump, I would, but then I'd be out of the screen.
That would be bad.
I'll just
But
stay
it's
right
been
here.
great. So we've got one more week to just go crazy with this. So you've got a few more days to order some gifts from the Amazon wish list
Yes.
or donate some money. You can still sign up to distribute gifts or wrap gifts as well. So let's make it a huge week
Oh,
together.
so good. Absolutely love it. Can't wait.
All right, well, we're going to spend a few minutes and just spend some time worshiping. And I know it might be a little different. I know it's kind of a different experience worshiping through a screen, right? But I think the thing that's cool about this opportunity is that we have a lot of distractions removed during worship, doing it this way. And so here's my challenge, that as we move into worship together, to really bring your whole heart, that even if you're sitting in your living room with a cup of coffee right now, to just spend some time and thank God for who He is.
Hey. presence is an open door. We want you, Lord, hey, like never before. Your presence is an open door. So come now, Lord, like never.
Hey Heartland, so good to worship with you again this weekend. I'm joined by my man, Sharman Pittman. Sharman heads up all of our community engagement efforts. And as many of you know, we announced last week that based on everything that we're doing through our Advance project, which is an effort for us to lay out a comprehensive strategy to unleash generosity in 2021 on the world and our community right here in our home, we announced our first partnership that we were able to fund through Advance. Well, we're really excited because this past week we were able to start work on a community initiative that we're really excited about. It's a partnership with Providence Baptist Church. Tell them a little bit about what we're up to and the work that's being done this week.
Okay, so at Providence Baptist Church, there's a community center literally right across the street, and sitting down talking with Bill, we've been able to understand the need of it and the importance of. And the last time we sat down and talked to him, he talked about how right now the building has Providence name on it. He said he wanted to take that off so it could serve as something for the community. Whether you're Baptist, whether you're agnostic, whatever it is your denomination is, or you may not even be religious at all, it could serve as a place where people could come and get help. And one of the ways they're going to be utilizing that building is for it's a Hispanic church to be able to meet there and congregate.
Because they primarily serve
Yes, they do.
a Hispanic community from
Yes, they
like
do.
Black Hawk and that
Yep.
whole area, right?
So it's crucial. And the blessing in it is that it really doesn't benefit them. It benefits the people within their community. And it's just a blessing to see all the moving pieces, because not only is it going to bless that community, but also they want to use it as an opportunity to help kids with after school programs, teaching little different workshops and all these kind of things that really make the community a better place.
So this is what's so cool. So this week we wrote a check for $18,000 on your behalf, Heartland, because of your generosity. And that $18,000 is starting the work. They're starting putting the roof on. They're beginning to get the work done. Now we still have a long way to go to get this community center where it needs to go. But at the end of the day, the work has begun. And I'm so grateful that so many of you have stepped toward us in generosity. One of the things we talk about is we want to be a church for anybody and everybody. But we also want to be a church that is generous and that unleashes generosity in our community and that takes big risks. And so we're grateful for so many of you. And yet in that season, the reality is that this has been our toughest season financially as a church that I think that we faced. It's been tough because of COVID. It's been tough because of some previous decisions that have been made, and we find ourselves with a pretty significant need in this season. And that's why we're asking that during Christmas, all of you consider a year-end gift. I know what a bunch of you are thinking is like, well, no, wait a minute. Last week, you gave away money to India, to a training center, and this week you're giving away money to something across town. Why don't you just keep the money yourself? And the reason why we're not keeping the money ourselves is because we really believe that when we step into generosity, that we unlock the gates of heaven. It's not just true for you, it's true for us as a church. So I think they say you're smoking what you're selling.
Absolutely.
That's what they say. So
that's what we do.
As a church, we are going to be generous, not because we have stockpile cash, but because we're going to be obedient. And then we're going to trust that God brings what we need in this season. But we're asking all of you to participate when we receive a year-end offering during our Christmas Eve services. So If you call this place home and this is your church, we're asking you to help us in this season and beyond. We know that this community needs our church now more than ever. And so we're just asking you to step toward us and you be generous in this season and watch what God does when you do. So super grateful for every single one of you. The pace of our response to this community and the world is dictated directly by the pace of your generosity. So grace and peace.
Hey, it is the most wonderful time of the year. Angie, you know what time it is?
It's Christmas!
It's Christmas time, which is how the song tells us, most wonderful time of the year. It's Christmas season. I know it's a little bit different, but here's what we have right around the corner for you. We're going to start off the Christmas week on December 20th on a Sunday, normal times in person, and then that week, I can't wait. It's going to
be such a great
On the
week.
22nd, we have a service at 6:30. On the 23rd, we have a service at 6:30. On the 24th, Christmas Eve, the day before Christmas, we have 3 options for you, 12, 2, and 4. Now, space is limited, so make sure you go to at least one of those if you feel comfortable coming in person here in the building. And if you don't feel comfortable, it's all good. We have the
got options.
greatest digital experience that the team's been putting together for you. Yeah, that's right. You right there watching and listening to me in this moment. Our Christmas digital experience is phenomenal.
It's
so you can do
beautiful.
that as well.
Yeah, it's gonna be amazing. And speaking of Christmas, so this is a season of generosity, right? I
Sure.
mean, we've been talking a lot
Giving.
as a church
Jesus
about
was given to us.
He was. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is like tis the season, right?
Tis
It's all
the
about
season.
giving and generosity. And that's what we've been talking about a ton as a church, about
Yes,
living
absolutely.
generously, about being the kind of church that is like free to give.
Yeah.
And to have hearts of generosity and openness for the rest of the world. And so you can join in that. And so there's 3 ways to give.
3
right?
ways you can do that. You can text Heartland CC to the number 77977. Go to the app, give through the app, or you can always go to our website, heartland.cc/giving, and you can give that way.
That's right.
Hey, last week we kicked off a 2-week series entitled "This Is Christmas." But you have to kind of like, "This is Christmas," because it's
With
a
a question
weird,
mark?
it's a weird year, y'all. This is just crazy. But
That's
this
true.
is Christmas, week 2. Last week we heard from Eric. This week we get the privilege again to hear from Eric. So check out this week's teaching.
Hey, Heartland. So glad that you're joining us online for the second week in our series, It's Christmas, with a question mark. And I invited some friends, just like we did last week. And if you haven't watched last week's message, you should go back and check it out. I think it was really a blessing hearing a lot of stories from this room. I invited my friends back. We're all socially distanced and with masks, except for me, so we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. But this is week 2 in this series, and I got to thinking about Christmas, and we're going to play a little game of word association. Now, you can play at home if you want to. You just shout it out. Now, nobody can hear you, right? But you can still shout it out, all right? So I'm going to play a little game of word association with you guys, and you just shout out your answers, all right? So it's the first thing that comes to mind when I say these words. So these are all Christmas words. First word, the manger.
Straw.
Jesus.
Straw, Jesus.
Baby
Animals.
Jesus.
Baby Jesus. Animals, yeah, that's good.
Why not?
Wise man.
Okay.
Okay,
First word.
first
You don't need
word.
to tell the whole
You know,
story.
yeah. Okay, second one. You took the second word, wise men. What comes to
Major.
mind?
3.
3.
Camels.
Frankincense.
Camel.
North Star.
North Star, frankincense.
Gold.
Gold.
Jesus.
Myrrh. Jesus.
Everything's gonna be
Pretty much for Sharman,
Sorry,
the
Brian.
whole is
Oh,
like
Jesus. All
Jesus.
Jesus.
Okay, here's one. Not a spiritual one. What comes to mind when I say Santa Claus?
Ho, ho, ho.
Jesus Claus.
Mrs. Claus.
You say Tim Allen.
Jesus.
Oh, that's
Tim
good.
Allen.
Tim Allen. No.
Or the mall.
Okay, here's another one. When I say elf.
Tiny. Will Ferrell.
Will
Yeah.
Ferrell.
That's good.
That's my wife. Okay, here we go. Now I'm gonna shift gears on you. What comes to mind when I say the word evangelist?
Billy Graham.
Ooh.
Billy Graham.
TV preacher.
TV preacher.
Bold person.
Bold person.
That's good.
Now, here's what's interesting. When we think about the word evangelism or evangelist, most people do not see themselves as part of that word, right? Like when you think about evangelists and we do word association, I guarantee most of us at home, you do not picture yourself, right? We have some sort of stereotypical, animated, extroverted personality who knows the Bible like the back of their hand, knows how to speak. You know, it's like some preacher that is able to say what needs to be said in any given moment. And that's probably, most people go, well, that's not me, right? I don't really know the Bible all that well. I'm not an evangelist. And I get to thinking about, you know, when we talk about evangelism, which I think at Christmas time, it's like, wait a minute, I thought this was a Christmas series. But I got to thinking about Christmas as one of these times, especially this year, when I think we have to think about the word evangelism, because it's one of, I mean, this whole holiday is based on Jesus. Like, if there were ever a time for us to talk about how do we share our faith, I actually think Christmas is that time, because I think most of us as followers of Jesus would say, yeah, I mean, it is a very commercialized holiday, but at its essence, right, this is Jesus' birth. It is, I think, the perfect time for two reasons. Number one, Christmas is about Jesus, so that's pretty perfect. Secondly, I think that Christmas is, there are some people whose souls are tired who need to hear good news. They need it. And in this season, especially in 2020, anybody ready for some good news? Anybody? Raise their hands, good news. So let me ask you this. Why do you think for most Christians, most followers of Jesus, they get so freaked out by the idea of evangelism?
They don't feel equipped. They just don't feel like they have like what it takes to compel somebody towards a relationship with Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah, or they could also think, like we kind of alluded to that, the evangelism or evangelist is, maybe there's some PTSD with that one.
Mm-hmm.
Like someone who has kind of manipulated the word to convince me to do something, maybe even give us something.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't want to be associated with that. I'm more of a quiet Christian.
Yeah.
You know, so there's this awkward balance with that.
I think currently too, there's such a self-imposed pressure to feel like you have to know everything. Like you have to, like, I think the mind game of I have to be able to convince them logically with this ideology, with all of this information, otherwise there's no way they're going to believe anything, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think that is a big part of it. I think lots of people are like, I just don't know enough, right? Any other reasons you think people are freaked out by the...
I think like piggybacking on what Angie said is like that pressure of like being, even knowing the work, but also it's kind of like, well, I'm not perfect. So if I'm trying to evangelize to you and you look at me and like, but what about this struggle in your life?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, what do you say? You know, how do you respond to that? So the feeling of being perfect in your own personal life, I think that stigma kind of like, well, I can't tell you about your life and my life, you know, if I had these issues.
Well, and I think we just live in a world too where I can't tell you what to think or what
Absolutely.
to do. And, you know, and so I think it feels really scary because it's like, if I tell somebody that they should think this, then I'm imposing my own stuff on them. And that's like a no-no right now.
You know, there are a lot of people, really good, like, Christ-loving people who have determined that on this one they're going to take a pass. There are tons of people who have said, look, I'm going to pray, I'm going to read the Bible, I'm going to go to church, I'll tithe. I ain't doing that. I'm just not, for these reasons and many others. And you know, I wanted to spend a little bit of time and maybe in this Christmas season break down the reality of evangelism. Number one, that if you're a follower of Jesus, you have to go and do this. Like, nobody gets a pass. Now, you can determine that I'm just not going to. So, you know, nobody can make you go out. But if you're living the gospel and you're living the way Jesus had in mind, this is part of the gospel. This is the great commandment, right? Great commission, and part of the great commandment that you can't love people if we're not willing to go out and tell them, right? These two things are tied together. And so as followers of Jesus, we don't get to take a pass. That's number one. Number two, evangelism, honestly, isn't as hard as we've made it. That sharing the gospel isn't about what you know or don't know. It's not about your personality, because I think probably the two pieces that get in the way most often with people is I don't know enough or I don't have the right personality. I'm an introvert. I don't like talking to people. I just as soon not be around anyone, right? Like I don't know, by myself. And so this idea is like, oh, there's certain people who are made to do this. Extroverted people with lots of knowledge about the Bible. Here's the problem. If that's the case, then there's only about 7 people in the whole world that do the evangelizing. Everybody else is like, Angie was telling a story. What was it about the high school
Yeah,
kid?
there was a student a while ago who said to me, he was talking to some other students. He's like, guys, we've got it really easy. All we have to do is like invite our friends to church, and then they tell them about Jesus.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's been so many of us are like, that's what I'm going to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to outsource evangelism to that preacher and to that guy. And I'm not. So this Christmas season, I want all of us to go, no. I'm responsible. This is part of my faith journey. And so not only are we responsible to go, but secondly, it's not as hard as you think. I'm going to give 3 words. 3 words that every single person, if you embrace these 3 words, this is how simple evangelism really is. And it starts with the first word, connect. So if you're at home, take a piece of paper, take your phone, write this down, connect. If you want to step towards what God had in mind, the first step is to connect. And I just sort of simply phrase this as to connect intentionally with people. Now, I know it's 2020 and we're like, like even getting in this space, we had to measure and social distance and cloth. And so like, it seems like connecting with people is a real challenge. But the truth is, like, it's not as hard. Being intentional isn't as hard as we make it. But we're intentional about all kinds of things in our lives, right? There's all kinds of things that we set our intent toward, right? And then we go and do it. Connecting with people intentionally is really the first step in evangelism. And I'll give you an example. Now, this is obviously pre-COVID, but I think one of the things, Christy and I were out in Colorado, and I had been feeling like, man, I've been a pastor for a while. All my friends are Christians. Like, I don't hardly know anybody who hasn't come to Jesus. And I had been taught, this was probably 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I'd said, I need to intentionally connect with some people who are far from God. And I got a random call from an old college roommate who lived in Colorado, lived in Denver. And he's like, hey, Parks, I just remembered you lived in Colorado and that you were a pretty good baseball player, and we have a softball team, and so would you want to join it? And I remember telling Chris, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to join it. I don't really want to go play softball on Thursday nights. Literally, my arm is so broken. Like, I can't throw a softball from the outfield to second base. It's going to roll because it's so broken from playing baseball. It's bad. But I told Chris, I'm like, I'm just going to intentionally join the softball team in order to get to know guys who are far from God. And I realized, like, on the second day that all these guys are pretty far from God, because I got there, it was the second, and I knew Alex, I didn't know any of the other guys, and so they're all standing around pre-softball game. And so these guys are all like seeing how many beers they can drink before the softball game. This is not a competitive softball league, let's be honest. They're how many beers can they drink? And so the guy next to me, he was like, partaking in a herbal substance that he had lit, and he was, smoking weed. And he looked over at me, he's like, hey man, you want to smoke some weed? And I was like, oh, no, it's cool. And he's like, all right, sweet. And so he kept, doing what he's doing. Then he comes back and goes, so what is it that you do? And I was like, I'm a pastor. He's like, trying to hide the weed. And I'm like, no, dude, it's all good. But it was interesting because over the next couple years, some of the most significant conversations I've had in a long time happened in this softball league. Yep. And it all happened because at one point, I just said yes to intentionally connecting, right? Like, that's it. It was just like saying yes to intentionally connecting. Can any of you think of because I think that is the first step. You've got to be intentional about connecting with other humans. Can you think of examples in your own lives where maybe you've seen that?
I'll share a really quick one. This actually just happened, which actually has nothing to do with me. It has to do with my wife because she's amazing at all of this. But our neighbor, so we just moved here to Rockford, and we have neighbors. We want to obviously meet our neighbors. We have a dog, so we walk our dog, and you're able to see other people that walk their dog, get to know them, and ask their name. And so our neighbor that's literally right across from us, they had their dog out. We had our dog out, or Amy did. And it was like, this is such a Debbie Downer, but it's like they had to put this dog down later that day. This is her last time taking her dog out.
Oh.
So Amy's out there with our dog Chase, and she obviously feels such compassion for this individual and their family. And so Amy gets in the house, and then she tells Parker, which is my oldest, and Parker writes a note, a kind note to her. And then they're like, hey, should we bake cookies? So they bake cookies, and they're gonna say just something very simple. And I think what you're saying is we overcomplicate so much, and this idea of hey, you could be a neighbor.
That's it,
right? Jesus says this pretty simply. So that actually just happened, which is a really cool how to get to know your neighbor and not just saying did you guys get my mail today? Well, let's swap, and then you forget about who they are. But it's they actually are experiencing something that's devastating to them as a family. How can we serve? And then I was talking to Parker later about it, hey buddy, that's really cool that you did that. He's like, what? Do you not think I'm generous? And I was like, no, man, you are. You're incredibly generous. What a kind heart that you have. But, at such a young... Yeah, but on such a young age, it's
That's evangelism.
Yeah, beautiful.
No, I mean, I think this is really important. Most people don't see that as evangelism, but it is. Yeah. It's the first step. So all of us can do that. All of us can connect. And I know in this season, it's yeah, but how? So... we'll do word association. What is one way in COVID season that you think people could connect?
Groups on Facebook.
Groups on Facebook.
FaceTime.
A FaceTime, yeah.
I think you can even do little simple stuff in person, just properly social distance. But I know that's what I have to do. It's hey, let's go get coffee. We just gotta be somewhere where we are far apart. But
absolutely. It's all about just being intentional. And that leads to the second piece, okay? So everybody can intentionally connect. It's part of the gospel Great Commission in this season. Number two, I think this is really huge. We have to expect God to be at work. So connect and expect. I think what's true of us is we often just kind of put ourselves on cruise control inside relationships. And oftentimes we don't expect God to be working at all. And when he does, we're crazy surprised. We're like, oh my gosh, God showed up. And the reality is if we want to step into this calling of evangelism, we have to intentionally connect, but we need to expect God to show up. I was thinking about it, Ortberg, I've used this analogy a million times because that's how brilliant he is and how good the analogy is. But he talked about Where's Waldo, those books. And, our kids are all grown up or getting grown up. They don't read Where's Waldo anymore or look at them. But the reality is, if you ever look at a Where's Waldo's book, they're those books with the little guy and he's hidden in these pictures. He's really hard to find. If you don't spend much time looking at pages. But kids who they love Where's Waldo books, they can find Waldo in a second. Boom, 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 boom. And they make you feel like a complete idiot, right? Because you're I didn't even see him there. And this is the reality. A trained eye can spot Waldo in a second. Yeah. Same with God. Like when we train our eye, when we walk into a relationship and we expect God to show up and we're looking, you know what starts to happen? We start to see him because we're looking for him to show up instead of just like being surprised, which is nice to be surprised by grace, but to be expectant of grace, to be in this relationship. Like something happens. And I think that's just a disposition of the heart, right? Where we walk into these intentional relationships and we're watching for God to show up and we're expecting him to do something in the life of this person that we care about. I mean, you don't have to really know the Bible very much to connect with someone intentionally and expect him to show up. Like, that's just sort of a disposition of the heart. And I think too often we're like Jacob when he awoke from his sleep in Genesis chapter 28, and he said, surely the Lord's in this place, and I wasn't even aware of it. Like, I think the greatest challenge for us is for us to go in and to be expectant, to be hopeful that God's going to do something in this relationship. Now, let me say this. Some of us can turn expectation into belligerence. And what I mean by that is it's like some of us are so expectant that we can be like, you remember the Bugs Bunny where he's like, he picks up it's the big abominable snowman, and he goes, and it's my bunny, and I will pet him and love him and hold him, and his butt's flying out the bottom. We get so excited about God that we can't, he's gonna show up in your life, so some of us need to take a deep breath. We're a little too expectant. We're a little too like God in your face. But I think all of us can walk into relationships and be expectant that God's going to do something in the lives of this softball team that I joined, or in the life of this FaceTime that I just engaged in, or in an email conversation or thread, or in this coffee conversation. And we don't have to force it. None of us have to force it. But I think all of us can live expectantly, right? Where you walk in and you expect it. And so connecting intentionally with people, being expectant that God is going to be at work, and that leads to the third piece that I think everybody can play, and it's really simple. Just be ready. That's it. It's to be ready. To walk into every conversation ready. To say what needs to be said. To pray with someone that when the opportunity presents itself. I don't know if you've ever been on a phone call with somebody and a conversation takes a turn and you didn't, and it's like, it just takes a turn. And I was just on a phone call a few days ago, and it was yesterday. And it was somebody who's becoming a dear friend. And they began to talk about a relationship with their father. And he made the comment about 15 minutes in, he goes, oh gosh, I didn't expect to have this conversation, right? Yeah. And I think part of what made that conversation happen is just like readiness to play our part, to ask a little bit of a probing conversation. And I'll say this, is I think this half of the room does this much better than this half of the room. Because us guys, let's be honest, being ready to have probing conversations for some of us sounds like literally a pitchfork to the eyes, right? It's like, I'm not gonna ask a deep. It's like, can't we talk about the football game or something? Like guys oftentimes have a struggle with this, right? But I want to challenge us. If we're ready to play our role, ready to play our part, something beautiful can happen. Can any of you guys think of a time, maybe in a relationship, where you were intentional, you really were expecting God, and then you were ready, and something really cool happened?
I think. Well, for me, I think in ministry, when you're constantly dealing with people, you have to always be ready for those opportunities. And I think for me, I've learned, and I think that's one of the misconceptions with evangelism, is that I have to throw the Bible at you. you know, like here you go, versus just having candid, organic conversations to where you make a person feel comfortable, and then you just kind of just having a dialogue. You respond in a certain way that may be based off the principles of God, and it's just like, I never thought about it like that. Explain a little bit more, and then those probing questions begin to come because it sparks an interest in them. And I just feel like there's just the Holy Spirit prompting them and awakening something in them for them to even feel comfortable to go deeper in conversations like that. So I think for me, I try to foster those moments in relationships where I meet, even if it's just a random person. And it may not be that first moment. It may be the next moment where, you know, we're talking to the next encounter, and just let God move.
It's good.
I remember when I was in college, I was working at Shopko in Belvedere.
Shopko.
That's gone now. And just had a coworker. We kind of knew each other, but not necessarily super well. Somehow we ended up in the break room together, and she just out of nowhere, I said, how's your day going? And it was not a good day. She was not in a good place mentally at all. Was just dealing with some pretty heavy, just mental health stuff. And it was kind of funny because, it was just a 5-minute interaction because we both had to go back downstairs and go back to work. And I told her, well, I get off in a couple hours and I know you're closing, but I said, just come over. We'll finish this conversation at the end of the night. And I didn't know if she was going to come back to the house or, I had no idea if she was going to call me. Well, she did. And she ended up coming back to my house, and we just sat down and talked for a couple hours, and I was able to just tell her a little bit about dark moments in my life and how God had shown up. And it was just a really cool moment and experience for her. She ended up borrowing my Bible and just taking it home and reading all the notes that I had written in it because she just was fascinated by it. And it led to just like a really, really cool opportunity to share who Jesus was with her.
Yeah.
Yeah, Trevor.
No, I was going to say, I remember, this is years ago, I was working at a restaurant here in Rockford. And what you said, I think, by the whole, like, being ready aspect, like, even the neighborhood we live in currently, it's like, we're just not, this isn't the place that we just happen to get. There's a reason why you're in that neighborhood. There's a reason why you work on that job. There's a reason why you see that regular customer. There's a reason why you're this individual's or this family's accountant. Like, there's a reason. If you have that mentality. I remember years ago I was working as a server in a restaurant here in town, and I think naturally I'm like, I'm just trying to get money. I want to close out. I want to go home. I want to be done. And then over time you begin to build the relationships with the other servers and the kitchen staff and the bartenders, and then eventually you have quick little moments when you're typing in orders or you're complaining about a customer. And I remember this one lady, we would always kind of pass each other and have these conversations, and then eventually she started asking questions about kind of like my life and why you are the way you are, because not everyone acts like the way that you do. And then eventually it came to a point where we had conversations about God and who Jesus is and coming to church. And I'll never forget, at Heartland, actually, we did our baptisms there, right there in the auditorium. And I was in the tank with her and her husband, able to baptize them. And it wasn't this quick, come to church, and they'll tell you what to do. It was like, hey, if I'm allowed, can I live this out in front of you long enough for you to see who the person of Jesus is? God knows I'm sure as heck not perfect, and I wasn't in the process. But over time, you got to see, and then you got to experience that moment of like a whole family's changed because of the person of Jesus.
And I think too often, so many of us think that the primary deal is like, what do I know? Do I know what to say? Do I have all the right verses? And that's just not the primary deal. Yeah. For most people, when we say, why is evangelism so scary? It's because I feel inadequate. I don't feel like I know what to do. I don't know how, anytime we start to get intentional. And I want to say, 1, welcome to being human. 2, the Apostle Paul in Ephesians 6:19, listen to what he says. He says, don't forget to pray for me. Pray that I know what to say and have the courage to say it at the right time. Does that not sound like most of us? Right? Like where we feel inadequate. And that's why I want to encourage us in this season. All of us. Like, it's as simple as connect, expect, and be ready. When we talk about these stories, it's about an intentional connection, expecting God to be at work, and then ready to play our part. And that part, it doesn't have to look like up on stage in this preaching moment. A lot of times it's in these small moments of connection, right? Where we're interested. We know God's at work, and I'm just going to be involved in this relationship. But this is what I know, is that if all of us take a pass on this, there are so many people who won't come to know Jesus. Look, Heartland, this is the deal. This Christmas, we can't take a pass on spreading the gospel. That's not just my job, or Carrington and the worship team, or this staff. That's not how it works. Like, this is our job. And I think this Christmas season is maybe the most important season that we have to make Jesus' name known. Like, this Christmas can be about him when each and every one of us take up this mantle. And I want to challenge you to write down these 3 words somewhere. Like, maybe you write it on your bathroom, mirror, or maybe you put it on an index card, or maybe you put it on your phone, that you're going to connect, expect, and be ready. And that's it. Connect intentionally with someone in this Christmas season. Expect God to be at work when you make the connection. And be ready for whatever it is that he asks you to do, to take a risk, to go to a hospital, to listen, to help, to make a gift or a card. But when we do this, God will show up. And I know that there are people who are literally just one connection away from knowing Jesus. Like in your world. Like one connection away. One. And imagine if several thousand of us took this challenge this Christmas to connect, expect, and be ready. What 2021 might look like in the lives of neighbors and friends and coworkers and students that we sit across from. What it might look like in their life. This Christmas, what would it look like if every single one of us took that serious, that we became evangelists, and we connected, we expected, and we were ready to play our part. Go and do it. Let me pray for us. God, give us the courage in this Christmas season to take the beautiful message of you coming to this earth in the form of a baby, ultimately, so that you would suffer and die on a cross for our sins so that we could be saved. Help us have the courage, those of us that have been saved by your grace, to connect, expect, and be ready for people in our world to know you. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. I'm ready.
Hey, that was a really great message. I felt like I was really close in a part of that message. I felt like I might have even been kind of like in the room.
I
I think you were there too, actually.
I was.
You were right, actually here. You were
like
actually
you guys
a part
were
of
there
it.
too, that's
hey,
right.
We're all part of it. What a great opportunity. This is amazing.
That's good. So, all right. So there's going to be a question that pops up on your screen here in a second. So you guys can take a second and push pause and discuss.
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place, and I worship you. I worship you, 'cause you are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. Oh my God, that is who you the darkness. Oh my God, that is who you are. You are here, it's touching every heart. And I worship you, oh Jesus, I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. Oh, I worship you, yes I do, I worship you. You are here, and you're turning lives around. I worship you right here, right now. I worship you. You are here. Oh, you're mending every heart. And I worship you. Oh, yes, I worship you. 'Cause you are a way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. Oh my God, that is who you are. Oh, you bet that I'm singing to you. A way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. Oh my God, that is who you are. Oh, I tell you, you are a way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. Oh my God, that is who you are. My Jesus, oh my Jesus, a way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. Oh my God, that is who you are. That is who you are. That is who you are. Yeah, that is who you are. That is who you are. I know it. That is who you are. That is who you are. Oh yes, that is who you are. That is who you are. And let me tell you what I know. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Even when I don't see it, oh, when sometimes I can't feel it. But I know you are way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. Oh my God, that is who you are. Oh, way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. That is who you are. That is who you are.
That is who you
That's just who you are.
That is who you are.
Oh, that is who you are.
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 Hey, thanks for joining us today. I hope that this has been as encouraging to you as it has to us. It's been a really special time together. You know, if you've got a financial need or a prayer request, we're here for you. We want to be able to pray for you. So you can reach out to us and email prayer@heartland.cc.
Again, thanks so much for joining us. Join us next week online or in person for Christmas at Heartland. We cannot wait to see you.
It's gonna be amazing.
Have an awesome week.
We'll see you next week.
Peace.